So, hope everybody's having a great day. Cam Inman in the house from the San Jose Mercury News. We're going to talk a little 49er football. We were both down in Santa Clara today. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan spoke to the media. Of course, we are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out. Emeryville, Corte Madera. They're open from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Also, we're brought to you by New York Style Sausage Company and Marin Auto Glass. Check them out as well at marinautoglass.com. All right, Cam Inman in the house. Cam, good to see you. Long time no see.
I could have had that Pig in the Pickle because I just barbecued a steak that was terrible. It was like, as Jim Harbaugh would say, it was like a $2 steak. It was tough and terrible. So
what was the cut?
I forgot because it wasn't very good. I thought it was New York. I thought it was New York, but I don't think it was. But I did have some shrimp and some garlic green beans to go with it. So it wasn't a total disaster.
Ooh, there you go. A little surf and turf.
Wife's out of town, so I made my son a little dinner, and he'll throw the steak down. So it was good.
Nice. In fact, my son came up to me the other day, and he's like, Dad. I'm like, what? He's like, did you know that Cam Inman went to Cal Poly? I said, yeah, I've talked to him about it. So,
I got Cal Poly merch and stuff here.
There you go. Look at that.
There you go.
Cal Poly Mustangs. Did you enjoy your time down there?
I loved my time at Cal Poly, and I go back every summer and teach at a journalism workshop called the California Scholastic Press Association for high school journalists. And
my brother's son took that a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I think you might have met him, actually.
I recall. He was a good student, and we have usually about 20, 25 students every year down at Cal Poly for 2 weeks. It's an excuse for me to go back like for 3 or 4 days, pretend I still live in SLO because it's just a great place.
Oh, I know. Well, that kid that you tutored or mentored to some degree is now covering Gonzaga basketball up in Spokane.
Well, that's almost as good as covering the 49ers because, I mean, we've covered the 49ers for a couple of decades now, right? And I was thinking about this today. This is a phenomenal team to cover right now. They are in championship contention. There's quarterback drama nonstop. They have the reigning defensive player of the year who's in a contract holdout, and we're still a week away from the season. I mean, I despise the offseason, the draft, practices, all that chatter. I cannot wait to see live football where we really get to see what's going on.
Exactly. Well, why don't we start with the reigning defensive player of the year who's holding out, Nick Bosa. Yeah. I asked John Lynch, I said, is there any chance at all, because there was that Reddit report yesterday, is there any chance at all that you will trade Nick Bosa? And he gave me the shortest, most succinct answer. He's like, no. Next question. And Shanahan basically said the same thing. Do you think they're being forthright, or do you think that they just don't want to consider trading Nick Bosa, but they actually have already at least cross that bridge with some other team?
I was the one that asked the Shanahan question. So you and I tag teamed to make sure we took care of that and got it done, because I think the reason we had to ask it was so that people understood that there is no way they are trading Nick Bosa.
Right.
If they trade Nick Bosa, there will be rioting. There will be no more fans coming to Levi's Stadium, and they will abandon this franchise. I mean, they got rid of DeForest Buckner and people were ready to riot. Bosa's a different deal. And they're going to have to pay the ransom, and they're going to have to do whatever they got to do to get him in so that he's on a plane with them to Pittsburgh. And I believe in my whole heart and everything I've heard, he did not want to come to training camp. So he survived that.
Okay.
Avoided the preseason, and then they started to engage in contract talks. So as you get closer to the season, there's going to be these reports of they're getting closer. Yeah, because they're getting closer to the season. And he wants to play football and get paid a lot of money to do it. And the Niners, I think, some of these, holdouts that we've seen over the years, they can get pretty contentious. And Nick's a laid back guy, but he also a businessman and he knows his worth. And I think everybody realizes he's going to break the bank, and it's a matter of when does he want to come in. So Larry, I'm guessing he's in there Monday for the first real practice. They may have done some real stuff today or tomorrow, but if Purdy's only throwing about 50% right now in practice and they're saving him for next week, then I don't see why they would rush Bosa in to get him going. But so I would imagine it's done early next week. I mean, TJ Watt came in, 2 or 3 days? Well, he was there, but he signed 2 or 3 days before the Steelers home opener in 2021. So I think there's a precedent. I think Nick's going to get his money. The Niners are aware of that, and they're just going to have to pay it. So, and make it fair. It's like he may be asking too much, but they're going to have to compromise.
My first theory was that they didn't want him in camp because they're pretty thin there. They've lost Ebukam, Amenahue, Jordan Willis. The depth behind him is not nearly as good, in my opinion. I just didn't think they wanted him there until about the 20th, but now it's the 30th, and now I think they would like to have him there. You've been covering this team for a lot of years. I mean, not far enough back to remember Fred Dean, but Fred Dean did hold out with the Chargers, get traded to the Niners, stepped right into the regular season. I forget what week it was, like week 8, week 6, and had 4 sacks against the Dallas Cowboys at Candlestick. What's the impact of this on Bosa? How much time do you think he actually needs to get ready to play his game?
Well, Fred Dean also held out in '84. And they won the Super Bowl that year too.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm confusing.
No, you're right. He held out from the Chargers in '81. Then they traded him to the Niners. Then
I could have swore his first game he went off.
He did. He did. Yeah. So Bosa will go off, right?
Well, I mean, do defensive ends need a lot? I mean, it's a wide 9, get up the field, go kind of a defense.
But he's a different defensive end. This guy, I don't think I've ever seen anybody. Started covering the team in 2000, right? I don't think I've ever seen a player attack their craft with such perfection, and he's maniacal about his body than anybody. I mean, he is. Nobody's concerned about what shape he's going to come in, right? Like Nick Bosa has no body fat. Right. He reported last year in better shape than ever and had the best season ever with 18.5 sacks. And if he got an extra month of rest rather than be at camp, well, maybe that'll benefit him come December and January when they really need him to come through too.
You've been covering this team a long time. What's the impact of a long holdout? Is there any impact at all? Is there any impact on the team, his teammates, on him? Or is it just negligible?
No, I mean, look, it's a different personality, right? If Fred Warner wasn't there, there would be this void of like this energy on defense. If George Kittle was not there, who's the spirit animal on the offense? Bosa's just a different guy in terms of people like at practice, watch him and learn, right? Not just reporters, but the other defensive ends will watch him. And that's the impact I think is like they've lost some, like, Drake Jackson says it's, the guy has all the answers. Well, it's time for these guys to do work right now anyhow, listen to their coaches. And then, Nick over the last couple of years has taken on a little bit more of a leadership role and speaking to the team the night before games, and is very dry wit. I mean, he is, of all the people you talk to in sports, he has such a dry, simplistic wit about him that it's just like, but there's also this, it's full of confidence, and I wouldn't say it's cockiness. It's just, he knows he's damn good and he can say what he needs to say. And I'm not just talking about when he was a rookie and calling out Baker Mayfield, but there's just every time you talk to him, there's some nugget that you'll learn or he'll give you some insight. And it's not trying to find a catchy quote to get content or something, but I love talking to him. I think he's great. Like last year I sat down preseason, I think in camp, and we had a one-on-one interview for our NFL preview magazine. And just, he's easy to talk to. I mean, he looks like he's a man of few words, but he's incredibly smart when it comes to football. So, him not being here, it's not like he's not learning what's going to go on in Steve Wilks' defense. It's still playing the wide 9, like he said. And it's like, get upfield, get after the guy, and be aware that they're probably going to either chip you or try to throw a pass over you, suck you in. And like, he's played in the NFL long enough to know what to expect. And that's why he's the defensive player of the year.
Yeah, he's a very special player for sure. What do you think the holdup is? Do you think he wants an absurd amount of guaranteed money? Is it possible, Cam, that he wants the entire deal guaranteed?
I don't know, but I would imagine that, yes, he wants to have the most guaranteed money than anybody, right? I mean, and Aaron Donald kind of set this outlier deal where it's only a 3-year deal, like over $32 million. But if the Niners are balking at it, they have to get over it and realize that that was there's inflation. Bosa's the reigning player of the year. That it's going to cost a lot of money. So yeah, I would imagine it's always about the money, right? It's not like, here's the thing. Does he want to go play somewhere else? I don't think that's the case, because I think Nick wants to win a championship. He's seen his brother Joey make a lot of money and play with the Chargers, but not advance in the playoffs.
Right.
Nick's tasted the playoffs, and he knows that the 49ers they should be the favorite to at least win the NFC. And if they're going to pay you that money, why would you want to go somewhere? It's not like he's going to reunite with his brother on the Chargers. He's not going to stay in Miami. And the Niners, I think that's why we also talked today, just made sure that they will not consider trading him. Could you imagine that they trade Trey Lance and Nick Bosa within a week? There's no chance.
It's unprecedented,
so
by the way.
That's great that we can get past that, and he'll be in the next week, right? And then life goes on, and he better get after Kenny Pickett and get a couple sacks, because I think that Steelers team is going to be sneaky hard to beat.
Do you think? I mean, you've been covering Kyle and John probably longer than I have. Do you think they get annoyed by that question, or do you think that they like putting that to bed?
No, they know what's coming. I mean, John especially is so media savvy, and Kyle's transparent, extremely more so than any coach I've ever covered. Although last week was probably a hiccup with that, with the whole Trey Lance number 2 quarterback stuff, but that's another story. I think that they know how the media works in terms of what people are interested in, and it's not like they have to say, we will never trade somebody. This is Nick Bosa. It's a different thing. Like any other person on the team, they'd say, hey, everybody's open for trade. They've always said that. Anybody's available in a trade. Well, Brock Purdy's not, Christian McCaffrey's not, Trent Williams not, George Kittle's not, Fred Warner's not, and Nick Bosa definitely is not, because this team is set up to win the Super Bowl. And they're not set up just for this year. We talked about the window closing or whatever when camp started. Justin Smith said something like that in 2013, I believe, or 2013 or 14 in the offseason. It kind of like woke me up going, man, that's right. A lot of these guys are old. The Niners have a wave of talent where they got a few years. I don't think this is it. And if they don't do well, Shanahan's not out the door. I think ownership has full faith in Kyle and John to continue this as long as they're happy doing it here.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And yet, to hear certain segments of the Niner fandom on YouTube and, out in the media space, there's a lot of people that are like, they better win it this year or they're gone. It's like, that's make-believe land. They're not gone. They've been to 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games. But one issue that I think is a major issue is that Ebukam, Amenahue, and Willis last year in the playoffs, Cam, averaged 91 snaps per game in the 3 playoff games. They've been replaced by Austin Bryant, Kerry Hyder, and Cleveland Farrell. To me, that's not the same trio by a wide margin. But John seemed to be very enthusiastic today about all 3 of those guys.
Well, you got Drake Jackson. You got Drake Jackson too,
and you do have Drake, and you got Beal maybe at some point. And Beal looks
I wouldn't
exciting.
worry about him. I think essentially they need Nick Bosa on one side to play 80% of the snaps. On the other side, you have Cleveland Farrell play 50%, Drake Jackson play 50%. Mix in Hyder or Bryant on the other side, and just hope they stay healthy, because you're right. I mean, if they don't have great defensive end depth. This is a team that went into the offseason saying we need to redo our defensive line, not redo it, but get it back to that level where it's the menacing unit.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't that towards the end of last season. So I like the fact that they added Javon Hargrave. I think this guy is going to surprise people. And I don't usually ever look at the interior defensive line unless they do something. And Eric Armstead didn't do enough last year, but he was hurt most of the year. Kinlaw's been hurt. So if Hargrave can rush the passer inside the pocket and Bosa's coming from the other side, it could be fascinating how the guys benefit on the other side of the line, whether it's Farrell or Jackson or whoever. And I was really curious to see just if there would be a salary cap casualty or something in the last 24 hours. And it doesn't happen, because if you're going to get rid of a guy, you can almost trade him nowadays to make sure that somebody gets him, and nothing came of it. So this is what they've got. And it's Steve Wilks' job and Chris Kosarek's to maximize what their talent is.
Yeah, no question about it. Surprising cuts. You've been doing this a while.
Not
Were
really
there
any.
any surprises to you?
No, I mean, honestly, like in my mock draft, I had a few wrong, of course. Mock draft, my mock 53.
Right.
I had the rookie cornerback Deshaun Jameson making it just
I did too.
because he didn't play, like he wasn't making interceptions all over the place, but he was aggressive and he was involved and engaged. And on special teams, they were sending him every which way in practices because they wanted to use this guy.
Playing him in the slot, playing him outside,
So
using him on special teams.
the question is, well, who do you take off? And I took off Ambry Thomas off the roster just because he may have been having a good camp and there was a lot of lip service paid to how well he rebounded from last year's kind of downfall. I hadn't seen enough. Like I hadn't seen enough plays from any cornerback, honestly, through camp. Nobody had an interception until Trey Swilling did, like one of those last practices. And it's just like, these guys got to get the ball. I mean, that's what made their defense a lot better last year, was had so many takeaways. So I wanted an aggressive guy. I like Womack because I think Womack can do that too. But Larry, I'm also the kind of guy that realizes that the NFL sets up cornerbacks for failures thanks to these rules, and quarterbacks are going to pick them apart. So no matter how great somebody is at cornerback, the other guys are going to get abused. So you need that pass rush to get to the quarterback to disrupt them as fast as you can.
My question today for Kyle Shanahan was about the run D. I said, Kyle, last couple of preseason games, you guys are giving up 6.5 a carry. It didn't look very good. Are you concerned? Is it something? Is it nothing? He actually went and said, well, if you're judging off of the preseason, it's an issue. And then he went on to say he didn't like the run D in the first preseason game against the Raiders either. But then he kind of went back and said, but there was a 75-yard run, and so the numbers look worse than they are. And there was a mobile quarterback that we didn't necessarily defend all that well. So it was almost like he was hedging. But you've been around him. I mean, does he have a legitimate concern about the run D, or is he not concerned? I mean, they got a great linebacking core.
Well, I think there's absolutely no concern when it comes to preseason games because I think they're a farce, and I think he knows that. So it's like you can throw out that you're giving out 10 yards a carry and he wouldn't give a crap. I think, but you bring up the points of, are they prone to giving up yards to a mobile quarterback still? That's been an Achilles heel for years for them, right? And if you have a new safety that's going to come down to the box and Jair Brown to complement Hufanga if he's healthy, Gibson if he's still going, you've got to make sure you plug up those holes. But also that's why you got Javon Hargrave also to do that on the interior. You got great linebackers. So I'm not that concerned at all about it. But the reason you have to, make sure that you have a good run defense is because it really does start with stopping the run. And you do that. And then they got a great test in week 1, Larry, with Najee Harris.
Yeah. And Jaylen Warren as well.
Yeah, but you have a young quarterback in Kenny Pickett, and the Steelers loved the preseason. Pickett was a perfect passer rating, and they went undefeated. But I'm telling you, the preseason doesn't matter. It really ratchets it up in such a different speed and intensity in the regular season. It's like Jair Brown's not going to be the last line of defense at safety. Actually, he wasn't. Who was it? Taylor Hawkins that gave up that 75-yard touchdown because he missed a tackle. He's not going to be in there. You're going to have all Pro Bowl quality safeties back there, and you're going to have Pro Bowl linebackers, Pro Bowl defensive front. So they've had really good run defenses over the last couple of years.
Number one last year. Number one.
I'm more concerned about who's going to be playing in the slot because teams are going to attack the heck out of that, especially in week 2 when Cooper Kupp lines up. They're going to just try to go all out after whoever's playing the nickel. And I think it'll be Isaiah Oliver because I think you're going to keep Lenore on the outside. And Isaiah Oliver is getting paid, $3 million guaranteed. So he's got to do it. And did you notice the last week they kind of backtracked and tried to, oh, no, we weren't saying he wasn't bad. We wanted us, look at other guys. What was the message to him saying, hey, you better step up because we do have other guys. And again, it was the preseason. Don't read too much into it. If they draft or they sign him for a lot of money, there's a reason, and they got to play him and see if he's worth it.
Yeah. A couple comments here in the chat. Cal's Man says, we're going to miss Jimmy Ward in the back end. We got this one from Tommy Huxley. He said, Jimmy Ward was the eraser, baby. Yeah. Tommy says, going to miss him immensely. Let's talk about Isaiah Oliver for a second. They're talking about going dual slots, maybe Diamador Lenore against the small, shifty guys, and maybe Oliver against some of the bigger slot receivers.
I don't buy that.
I personally think that you just put your three best corners on the field. That's
Right.
my belief, and I think
Correct.
Lenore, Womack, and Mooney are their three best corners.
Mhm.
But they've sure gone to great efforts to talk up
Yeah.
Oliver in the last week, haven't they?
I think you also, but like, and you can have two nickelbacks when they're in four wide receiver sets, right? So that's where you're going to say, okay, Lenore's inside and Oliver's on the other guy, right? And then you could have Womack or Ambry on the outside. Um, the Steelers have a couple decent receivers, but they'll figure this out. Again, it's going to be a lot easier if Nick Bosa is going out there and helping those guys, right?
Sure.
Because they all say it's the cornerback and the secondary is tied to the pass rush. So I always have doubts, Larry, about like just the pass defense, no matter what, just because I think, you might hit the quarterback wrong. You might have a pass interference penalty or a hold downfield. You might be 3rd and 15 and Patrick Mahomes whizzes one downfield, something crazy. Too soon to talk about that. But, uh, it's still an elite defense, and they basically do have a few new parts, and they got to see how those work. They need Dre Greenlaw healthy, and he hasn't been out there much the last month. So there's things to watch.
It's interesting too. If they struggle on defense, like D'Amico covered everybody. He never said a negative word. I get the vibe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I get the vibe that if things go sideways, that Wilks is going to verbalize it. That Wilks is not going to have any sacred cows. He's just going to come out and he's just going to say whatever it is. That's my read. But you've been around a lot of different coaches.
No, I agree. He has a harder edge to him, definitely. And they're all three different. It's going to be interesting though, because Wilks is up in the booth on game days, and
What's the significance of that, Cam, for people who are not as into it as you?
So let me ask people this: like, so when you remember watching Niner games the last 6 years, you would see sideline shots of Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans, like screaming, getting chest bumps with guys or getting intense. Like last year in Atlanta, their defense was terrible. D'Amico Ryans had everybody on the sideline, all the defensive players in a huddle to scream at them to say, do your job. And then they turned it around, did better. They still lost the game. So Wilks is going to be calling the game from upstairs where he has a better aerial view to kind of see how they're attacking the Niners defense. And if that's where he's most comfortable, that's cool, because he's not a new guy. He's been coaching around for 20 years in about 20 different spots is the weird thing. But he knows what the weaknesses will be. And one other thing, Larry, about him is if cornerbacks are his specialty, right? That's who he's usually working with in practices. I like it because he will know how to protect them and how to utilize them best. And I think you're going to see a lot more blitzes. So maybe it gives him a little better advantage up there to kind of see like where the holes are on offense and where you can have a guy in a hug rush and which safety or linebacker you want to send up the gaps to go disrupt things and help the pass rush.
In the interviews that we've done with the DBs, they all seem like he's individually challenged each one of them to be better. None of them are glowing about the job that they've done, the season that they had. They're all like, I need to be better. We need to be better. I mean, they seem to be like really in this mindset of we must improve. We must improve. It just seems like that's the impact that Wilks is making.
But you know what? They don't have to be led by him. They have to be led by Fred Warner also, right? Eric Armstead's a captain. You have Hufanga's probably kind of taken on a captain role, and Charvarius Ward, he and I sat down at the end of mini camp, and he was talking about how he wants to be a bigger leader this year. He wants to be the vocal leader of that secondary, and that also means he has to make plays. And so he's putting that pressure on himself because he wants to be an all-pro. He wants to be a Pro Bowler because he wants to get paid probably too in the next couple of years because he's only got a 3-year deal. But he's far and away the best cornerback they've had since Richard Sherman. And he is going to get thrown to. I mean, like last year was easy to kind of throw at whoever was opposite Ward. And Ward was following their best receiver. This year, I'd be curious to see how Wilks handles that, because does he want Mooney Ward shadowing the number one receiver like he kind of did last year? I mean, he had some great games, but then towards the end of the season, I think DK Metcalf let him up pretty good late in the season. But I love him. I love how he plays, and I just love his demeanor. And I think that rubs off on some of these young cornerbacks too.
He's one of my favorite interviews. I did an interview with him last year, Cam, where I said, hey, look, I don't want to spend a lot of time asking questions, but I want to glean as much as I can from you. So let's just talk wide receivers. You're a
Yeah.
corner. I know you know them well.
Yeah.
I'm just going to name a wide receiver. You just go stream of consciousness on me. And it was like a 15-minute interview where I just said, DK, Hopkins, just straight on down the line. And it really showed, one, how smart the guy is. He had it all cataloged. Devontae, oh, he's good. He's got an inside move. You got to be, he'll sell this, he'll sell that. I mean, he had a scouting report on every receiver. It was my favorite interview that I did all year.
He's a professional. That's your job. You got to know what you're doing.
I know.
But I dig it. And that's right. I remember, Michael Crabtree was a guy that really hated talking to the media. He's like, I don't want to do the TV game. I'm not about the cameras.
Right.
So the best interview I ever had with Michael Crabtree, Matt Barrows and I just had him at his locker. No recordings. No, we weren't writing anything down, but we were doing the same thing. Like, all right, who's the best cornerback on this team and why? And he'd be like, oh, Tremaine Brock. We're like, what? Tremaine Brock? This was before Tremaine Brock was on anybody's radar. And we're like, dude, you're great. Why don't you just talk like this all the time? He's like, I'm not about that game. I'm like, So.
East Coast Red and Gold podcast says, how severe is the Baker cyst for Hufanga?
Do you want to do it in like you could pronounce that in the Bosa way and say Baker. So I guess it's apparently painful. And Talanoa Hufanga was not on the practice field today from what we saw, which is not great, but I don't think it's incapacitating him where you would worry about week 1. But I am not a Baker cyst expert, nor do I ever want to be. I just love the fact that they didn't just say, yeah, he's got a knee issue, but it's not ligament or bone related, right? They could have just like generalized it, but Kyle loves to play with it sometime, and he'll give you the specific words so that we go on like down a rabbit hole. And then we're like, okay, Baker cyst. Yeah. So there's a fluid buildup behind this. Could be very painful. But you know what? Like, look at Hufanga, man. That guy, he goes a million miles an hour and he's all ball. He might be also the nicest person I've ever met in my life. He is always so polite and friendly.
He's the kind of guy you want your daughter to grow up and marry someday. He's such a straight shooter. He's such a cool guy as far as he's everything, right? He's the alpha on the field, but also he's a total gentleman. He's
but hold on. Hold the letters of recommendation for him.
Okay.
He made mistakes last year and he's aware of it. And so is Daniel Bullocks, their safeties coach. And Bullocks told me the phrase was he got dirty eyes, meaning he got caught looking in the backfield when he needed to actually be following where he needed to be in the back end. And so he needed to clean that up. And the beauty is he will take that criticism and he tries to do that. And he admits to that. He doesn't walk around like he's perfect.
He fell off some tackles and some sacks as well last year. First half of the year, I was amazed, Cam, when I went back and looked at the Bears game. He was awesome in that Bears game. He was everywhere. But by the end of the year, he started falling off some of the tackles and some of the sacks.
Yeah, but I don't know what safety I'd want back there more. I just love – he's a playmaker, right? They've had so many safeties on this team over the years where you go, okay, he's fine. Or this guy's a really good hitter, which you can't do anymore in the NFL.
Right.
So I want a guy that has a great nose for the football. And when the Niners drafted him, was he 5th or 6th round?
5th round.
So those that are familiar with the high school football ranks in the Bay Area may have heard the name Matt Sweeney at a Foothill High School in Pleasanton.
Okay.
And the minute it was like the day after the draft, I ran into Matt somewhere and he's like, hey, best player that they drafted is Hufanga. Just watch. I know football players. He's going to be a stud. And Matty was right.
And you know who else was all hot to trot on him was Scott McCloughan, who did an interview with Lombardi and Barrows for the Athletic and was like, yeah, I really like him a lot. Did Shanahan and Lynch Friday night own the Lance thing enough to the point? Because there's a lot of people wanting to hold their feet to the fire.
Well, but what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to?
I felt like they did, but there were an awful lot of people who felt like, they didn't. They need to be roasted, and they've been roasted nationally.
They handled it fine. I mean, they're not going to resign. Okay, so get over that.
Right.
They're not going to say, "Man, we screwed that up. We should have had Mac Jones, or we should never have drafted up." Or there's only so much you can do. That damage is done, right? And did you want them to crow and say, look what we got in the 7th round? We got this Brock Purdy guy, right? They're not doing that because they know they lucked into Brock Purdy. I thought they owned up to it fine. I despise the way it went down on Wednesday.
Where they put Hargrave and Warner out there after practice.
That's what bothered me the most was they put those two players up to answer for their quarterback move when they knew that was the story of the summer, was who was going to be the number 2 quarterback or the number 1. But like what was going to happen to Trey Lance. And then you send up these 2 defensive guys that first of all don't know what's going on. So that was another thing because they couldn't answer to why Trey Lance was not at practice, which makes Trey Lance look terrible. And to me, if I was a player, now see this, I can't put myself in their locker room, but I would be wondering how that went over in the locker room going, well, that was kind of a really cruel move to put those 2 guys on there instead of just meeting with the media, go explain why he was a number 2 quarterback and then be done with it. And that's Kyle thought he was doing that on the radio. And that's a whole different thing because you're talking to the flagship radio station, which there are topics that they are allowed to avoid if they want to. I'm not saying that they do. I'm just saying the independent media reporters, you can ask questions, hard-hitting questions like, are you going to trade Nick Bosa or not? But
there's not a financial.
But I thought they rebounded pretty well. They were willing to answer questions all night. The problem was we got out of there about we were done interviewing about 11:30, so it was late night. Yeah. But whatever, it was good. I mean, they answered to it. They haven't tried to sidestep it. And I thought Kyle's answer today about when he was asked about the weirdness of the 49ers and the quarterback situation.
Jimmy's comments, in other words.
Yeah. And whatever he was saying, it's weird, but it's unique. It's not weird. It's unique. But I thought the way more fascinating answer was he went step by step, quarterback by quarterback on why they did each move. And everything was valid. Okay. And the point of all of that was to say, we committed to this guy, then he got hurt. So we committed to this guy and he got hurt. So now we've committed to this guy. Right? It's very simple. It's not weird. It's football. Guys got hurt. So what can you really say about, yes, it's weird that there's all these injuries happening. It's not weird that they drafted somebody in case Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, right? And I'm not an apologist. I think
I know you're not. You're not.
They know that they screwed that draft, all those draft choices up. At the same time, that's 3 first-round picks that you're not paying. You only paid 1. That was Trey Lance, right? So, I mean, financially, it worked out great for them because now they had money to spare to spend on all these all-pros that they've had to re-sign and extend.
Why did they have to move on, in your opinion? Because they both seem to state that they think that Trey Lance's career arc is not it's not official, that they still believe in him, so on and so forth. I don't know. If you believed in him so much, would you really trade him to one of your main rivals in conference? Is that just something you say, or do you think they actually believe in him?
I think that's being respectful because my whole thing with Trey Lance going into this camp was we have not seen Trey Lance. Nobody has seen Trey Lance to call him a bust. We have not seen enough of him, right? And then we saw him all through camp. And I don't think it was a pretty camp. I don't think Sam Darnold had a fabulous camp, but Sam Darnold would have 1 or 2 throws a camp where you go, or 1 or 2 throws a day where you go, okay, that's pretty darn good. Where Trey would have 1 or 2 throws where you go, that was so far off the mark, or he missed the gimme throws where you go, that's very concerning. And then in the games, and I really try not to read too much in the games, but when there's a live pass rush on you for really the first time, because they don't do it, and he seems so uncomfortable. And you can say that's because he hasn't played, which is true. And that was his problem coming into the NFL. So circle back. The problem is he's not going to play here. So he's not going to be able to get those reps in practice. So if you're putting him in December, it's probably going to look like deer in the headlights all over again. So he's got to get some reps and go somewhere where he's going to practice enough and play enough where he can thrive. Because I think everybody can agree he's a great person. Everybody really enjoyed dealing with him. Nobody really knows if he's a great quarterback, and he didn't look like it.
We got this one from Luke Luna. He says, Larry, stop taking the high road. He would have walked in free agency. You get a pick for him while you can. It's a favor to Lance as well. I personally think Lance is going to figure it out. I just don't think it's going to be on their timeline. And he was going to get too expensive.
No,
I get it.
I think that's all fair. I think that's all fair and reasonable to say. Yeah.
Is Brock Purdy's arm strength or health a concern at all? Or is, my son showed me something about an hour ago that I didn't even
Mhm.
notice. I watched the
Wiggle?
film twice.
Yeah.
Well, no, that the D lineman number 90 for the Chargers came within a whisker of hitting that elbow mid throw again. But and then he didn't, they said that they're having a dial it down week, trying to freshen up Brock. You think we're getting the straight story there? Is his health, is his elbow a concern?
I think it's a concern forever, right?
Really?
I mean, just because nobody knows, it's kind of the land of the unknown, right? He came back so fast and he looked so good in camp. Like he looked like Brock. Like, and it's just, he's airing out 40-yard passes from day one. You're like, whoa, okay. But the way he commands the offense and understands that's not a concern for me. I am concerned just because you don't know the durability aspect of it. I mean, I've talked to doctors about this injury, and they said how they repaired it is absolutely the right way to go. And 3 months was enough time to get him going. And so they said the Niners were even maybe a little conservative with it. So he's going to get hit in the elbow at some point. This is the NFL, right? Guys are going to be going after it. It looks like he's wearing a pad because he usually has his sleeve kind of up to about here, right? And so it looks like there's a pad under there. The fact that they've dialed it down this week is interesting because I had no idea what the pitch count was. So Shanahan says he was allowed 700 throws a week, and now they're going to give him 350, which is, it's kind of funny. It's like, who's really doing a pitch clock, but I guess they can do it. I think this is almost like they're freshening up a lot of guys this week, right? Armstead wasn't out there. Kittle wasn't out there. Greenlaw wasn't out there. Hufanga. So it's like, all right, this is your guys' this is your R&R before we're going full tilt next week. But I think it's forever going to be a concern, Larry, don't you?
I mean, I just think especially because he's kind of viewed as somewhat slight and smaller, and there's a lot of people who don't feel that he can get through the NFL season. And that's their big concern with him, is that he's not 6'4", 230. He's 6'1", 225. And, I will say this, though. If you're standing next to the guy is pretty thick.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like he's some
look at
tiny little guy.
He's got Bosa Jr. legs, man. His quads
he's pretty thick. He's a pretty thick guy.
And remember, he's a pretty freaking tough dude. He played with a broken rib in
tough.
Seattle. He won his road start in Seattle for the first time with a broken rib. He won everybody's respect off of that. So you just hope that thing can stay healthy for the next 5 months, the next 5 years, because he's a joy to watch. I mean, they're putting up 30 points a game because he knows where to get the ball. He has that innate feel of the pocket, and he can be fun to watch, as he tries to escape guys and figure out the NFL. I mean, he looked like he was figuring it out week by week last year, and they kept winning and kept putting up points, and that's why you had to stay with them.
Does he get better or does he get worse this year? Forget the record. Just the record is
no. I think he's definitely going to get better because he's going to know what to look for now for defenses a little bit more. He knows the speed of the game. I will say this: he doesn't look like he's trepidatious at all in the pocket with the elbow. Like he is throwing the ball wherever it needs to be, and he is not babying it. So, we only saw him throw a couple passes today because of that. What do they call it? Deloading.
The deloading, which
I love it when athletes or teams make up words. We're the wordsmiths, and they come up with these words that are just fascinating.
Yes, we will be deloading this week. Okay, 2 last ones before we let you go, and we appreciate you, man. First of all, let me just say, I've listened to your questions of players in the locker room, and I gotta say, and I don't want to embarrass you, but I admire the way you go about it. I just feel like there's so few people that can ask good, not suck up questions, but also don't turn the players off and aren't in kind of a gotcha mode. I've saddled up to you when you're talking to some guys, and it's like, I think like you and Matt Barrows do a phenomenal job of asking questions that you need to ask. You're not there, for shits and giggles. But at the same time, there's a humanity to the whole thing. So I just wanted to say, man, I really do appreciate your coverage.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, quickly. I mean, I just try to relate to them on a personal basis, and it's
Yeah.
just I also don't take things too seriously. This is sports. But I'm also extremely respectful for what these guys do. So I'm not there to be a hot take or rip them apart or tear them down. If they screwed up, I want to know why. And I want to learn from it so that we can tell our readers or our viewers what's going on. I mean, that's the whole point. We're not the story. They're the story, and we're kind of I want to say like a concierge for the fans to explain what's going on with the team.
But I mean, it's a tough blend, and there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of I mean, not pressure, but there's a lot of elements and
Larry,
things
when's the
going
last time somebody told you off in a locker room?
Not too many times. Probably Jeff Kent in the Giant clubhouse one time. Actually, he was in the Astros clubhouse after he left the Giants.
He tells everybody off.
He had complained that he said that Bay Area people were so stupid for paying the housing prices, and I put it on with Ralph and Tom, and the next day I went in there, and he's like, "You put that on the radio." I'm like, "Dude, you said it into a live mic. Sorry, bro." And he kind of grabbed me up around the shirt, and I kind of grabbed him, and we're standing there in the hallway, and it's like, really, seriously, you're gonna try to throw me around in here, Jeff? Come on.
I had one player come up to me once, like in my early years as a beat writer, and he was all pissed, and he was a problem guy, and wasn't a Pro Bowler or All-Star or anything like that. And there was a defensive lineman standing right behind me, chuckling, and he goes, "Cam, don't worry, I got your back."
That's awesome.
They hated the kid too, and I was just kind of cracking up. There was one time though, I think my first week or two on the beat back in 2000. I get word that Jeremy Newberry is pissed at me about something I wrote, and so I go back.
He's kind of a big hostile guy,
big dude, right?
Intimidating guy,
he's an East Bay guy, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to be on his bad side, and so I go read the story, and the only mention of his whole name was that he had a holding penalty that nullified a Garrison Hurst touchdown. I didn't call the holding penalty. I didn't say it was a stupid move on his part. I just said that was it. So I went, found him in the locker room. I said, "Hey, I heard you're pissed at me." He goes, "Yeah, what do you write crap about me?" I go, "This is exactly what I wrote." I go, "Did you read the story?" He goes, "No." I go, "This is what I wrote." And he goes, "Oh." I go, "Are we cool?" He goes, "Yeah, we're cool." I go, "If you ever have a problem again, come to me directly. That's how we deal with it. We don't need intermediaries, right? It's just go talk to the person. If I wasn't fair, let's figure out a way to make it right and understand what's going on."
Sonoma Coast Villa says, "Do you still think the Niners will beat the Steelers bad in Week 1, Larry?" And I do. I really do. I think the Niner weapons, Debo, Ayuk, CMC, are going to have a real field day against the Steelers secondary. And I think Bosa, if he's healthy and if he's in there, could have a real field day against a rookie left tackle making his first career start. I know Pittsburgh's got a gaudy record Week 1, especially at Heinz Field under Tomlin. But I really think the Niners I think the Niners kind of not emotionally. Emotionally, they showed up for the Bears last year, but they weren't really dialed in mentally until that Week 2 game.
I think that rainstorm took them out of their whole focus. And it was like, oh, what are we going to do? Well, we can beat this crappy team, but you couldn't because things backfired real fast.
And there were some busted plays on D, right? The Pettis thing, and then Greenlaw had a couple bad penalties that were just overzealousness. I think they'll be much more on their game this year in Week 1. I think they'll be ready to roll from the opening snap. How do you see Niners Steelers Week 1?
I think you said the name in there that we haven't talked about enough, and that's Christian McCaffrey. I think they are so freaking lucky to have this guy because I think he's the best player in the league, to be honest with you.
Wow.
The way that the Niners can use him as a running back and a receiver, especially, they're not going to have Ray McLeod in the slot. They'll have Jawan Jennings or have Ayuk or Debo take turns in there. But I think McCaffrey could just have a huge year. I mean, not MVP because running backs don't win MVPs, but he's your offensive player of the year. Brock Purdy can be your comeback player of the year. And then you can give the MVP to Aaron Rodgers for getting the Jets into the playoffs and thriving in the New York media, So I think the Niners will win. I think the Niners are going to do really well. So.
Your camera went south.
What the heck happened there?
What happened?
I don't know.
Anyway, we're last one anyway. Jake Moody. Lynch called him a rare talent. He's got a quad, but Cam, it doesn't sound like it's going to keep him out a long time. Will Jake Moody kick Week 1, and what kind of year do you think he'll have?
Is that a bad sign that we went to dark because of Jake Moody? Larry, I don't know. I mean, it's the fact that he's got a sore leg or a hurt leg already is not a great sign. But when Doug Bryan was a rookie kicker for the '94 team, he told me, because I asked him this on draft day recently, he said, you kick so much basically from the end of college through the combine and all this stuff that your leg can get sore. Oh,
We got you. I can hear you.
oh, okay.
No, we lost you. Oh, we lost Cam there. Well, if Cam can get back in here in the next couple minutes, we'll put him back on. Michael Alanis says, I'm not saying Nick gets traded, but why do people let it affect their life? With comments like, we'll riot. I don't remember rioting in Kansas City when they traded Tyreek Hill, or in Oakland when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of people that are, very emotional about the Niners, period. And 49er Empire says, Larry, make a shirt that says deloading. I can do that. I can make a shirt that says deloading. All right, that's going to do it. I know we wanted to get Cam back in here, but he may have had a battery issue with his laptop. But thanks to Cam for joining us. He's fantastic. Read him in the San Jose Mercury News. He does a phenomenal job covering the 49ers. Oh, there we go. We have him back? Oh, you're back. You're back. I was just touting the job that you do for the San Jose Mercury News.
Okay. That was my computer that did all the great job, and it just died on.
Jake Moody. Where are you on Jake Moody?
I am in the corner wondering what's going to happen, because I think everybody is. And you know what, Larry? Pittsburgh's an incredibly tough place to kick.
Yeah.
And you're going to be making your NFL debut on a sore leg in Pittsburgh in that environment. Holy smokes. I think they'll have somebody else kicking. Not that he can't handle the pressure, because I think he relishes that. I mean, he kicked in the big house, right? With Harbaugh as his coach, no less.
Right. 100,000 people in the stands.
Yeah, I like the kids' moxie. I like the fact that if they were going to draft a kicker and not have Robbie Gould, then you go out and get the best one in college, he's been awesome in practices.
Yeah.
Games have been just weird, I guess. Can we use that word? Can we borrow a word from Jimmy Garoppolo and say it's a weird situation?
It's just kind of a weird situation going on.
Situation. But I don't get the look that he's a deer in the headlights being on an NFL roster on a star team. I also wanted Zane Gonzalez looked like he was going to be fine. And then, could he really get injured in pregame just like he did a year ago in Carolina? That's a sad story. So
is Robbie done? Is Robbie Gould for sure done?
No, I don't think so. But he's not going to be on their week one roster. If you're bringing in Robbie Gould at $5 million a year or $4 million a year, that's guaranteed on if he's on the week one roster, Larry. So
right.
They do not want to do that. I mean, I think they cut ties and they didn't burn the bridges or whatever, but they moved on in a different direction. And I think Robbie was waiting for the right opportunity. I think he's probably, he's back in Chicago, and he's probably really enjoyed his summer just being around his family. He has 3 young boys, and
yeah.
I think he'll start jonesing to be kicking though in the next week or two. And so, that was my thing. If Moody tore his quad, which doesn't sound like the case because they said today everything is trending well, right?
Right.
Then you're not bringing in a veteran, not bringing in Robbie, somebody that you're going to have to pay a lot of money to. And then you're going to hope for the best that the kid rallies. That's why you drafted him.
Cam, awesome stuff, man. I've got a fantasy draft at 8:00, so I'll let you go here.
Sure. Okay. Good luck.
Hey, but I appreciate you, man.
Don't draft any 49ers. It's a conflict of interest. That's my rule. I do not draft Niners. I did that once with Greg Clark, and he's like, "Why did you draft me?" I'm like, "Oh, nice guy." I go, "Don't draft me." So do not draft 49ers. Conflict of interest.
Okay. I'll take
but
heed
if you're going to draft somebody, take Christian McCaffrey.
I was thinking maybe Ayuk.
Yeah.
Ayuk looks good.
If you're gonna go against my wishes, I would take Ayuk. Yeah.
All right, brother. Hey, good stuff, man. We love reading you. You do a great job. Keep it up, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Larry.
There you go. The great Cam Inman, the San Jose Mercury News. Cam Inman. All right, let's do a quick thanks to our sponsors. We're brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. We're brought to you by New York Style Sausage Company. We're brought to you by the title sponsor of the Krueg Show, Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And we're also brought to you by Underdog. Check out our brand new sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Click the link in the description and you can sign up using the promo code Krueg, Krueg, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. So we'll be using Underdog Fantasy every week this football season to do fantasy tournaments with our listeners. A couple last chats here that I caught. We got this one from Patrick Fitzgerald. What happened to McCrary Ball? He's a New York Jet. So there you go. And it's too bad because he's a hell of a guy, and I wish he had stayed, but he's a New York Jet. Let's have a quick mention of our sponsors in a video form, and we'll start off with Pig and a Pickle and their location in Corte Madera.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York Style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York Style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show, I got to jump because at 8 o'clock I've got my 95.7 The Game fantasy draft. I have the 9th pick overall in a 14-team league. Join me tomorrow morning on 95.7 The Game. I'm sitting in for Bonte and Shasky with Alan Stiles. Joe Montana is going to be in the house with us in the morning. So check us out in the morning on 95.7 The Game. Joe Montana, the great Joe Montana, will be joining us on the radio, 95.7 FM, 95.7 The Game. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have our big show with Vish and Jesse at 6:30 Pacific, right here on the Krueg Show. Jack Hammer is going to join me, I believe, on Friday, the coach on Saturday. We got a lot of Niner talk between now and week 1, which is a week from Sunday. And thanks to Cam Inman for joining me. Thanks to all of you for jumping in as well. Until tomorrow morning on 95.7 The Game, we're out.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no.